I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. I was listening the other day to a political talk show. The host is named Lars Larson. He's nationally syndicated. And he had a caller call in that kind of piqued my interest, to be honest. He had this caller call in, and it was a gal who basically said that she didn't know if she was a liberal or if she was a conservative. She didn't know if she was a Democrat or a Republican. And she called in and she basically asked him, "Hey, can you tell me what I am?" So obviously somebody who is just getting interested in politics, probably is somebody who hasn't really had much, of an interest to this point, but for some reason, whether it be the economy or whatever the case may be, something in her life has kind of woken her up to the fact that there is a political thing out there that she should probably understand where she stands on certain issues. And so she calls into this show and she basically says, what am I? Can you tell me what I am? That kind of piqued my interest because I guess I've always known what I am. I guess I've always understood that, my belief system kind of falls into a certain category, and I've had much of my political belief system for most of my life. I mean, there are definitely certain issues that I've changed my mind on, or I've heard different arguments or, discussions on the issues. And I've said, okay, well, yeah, you know what? I think I'm changing my mind on this one, or I've taken a different view or whatever the case may be. That's definitely happened before. But I've always kind of known that I kind of fall on the side of conservatism. If you listen to this podcast pretty much at all, you're gonna know that that's kind of where I fall, right? And many Christians are in that same boat because the conservative point of view obviously is a lot more along the lines of what the Bible has to say. It's kind of the crux in many ways of this podcast, and so. So when this question came up, I was really interested, and it kind of got me thinking. Now, for the sake of argument or whatever, Lars Larson answered the question by saying that in general, conservatives tend to be a little more logical in their thinking, and when it came to liberals, they're definitely a lot more emotional in how they view life and the world around them. And he went a little bit deeper into that, and they got into some issues and whatnot. But it definitely got me thinking. There are people out there that really don't know what they are or what they believe. They don't know what camp I guess they would fall into, if you want to fall into a camp. But basically, what is behind the way that you believe. And so I sought out a couple things here, and one of the things that came up was this they called it a short little quiz, a political quiz. It's from Advocates for Self-Government, and they had this short little quiz to tell you whether or not you're a conservative, you're a liberal, and they fall into a couple other categories too, but mainly those two, right? And so I decided, okay, hey, guess what? Why not? Let's take it. So here's where we are, and I'm going to read this to you. We're going to go over some of this stuff, and then I'll tell you where I fall. You probably, like I say, spoiler alert, you already kind of know, but let's go through this and let's see a little bit about what this test is all about. And it talks first of all about personal issues. This is the personal issues category, and under personal issues, the first question is: government should not censor speech, press, media, or internet. And all of these, by the way, are agree, maybe, or disagree. Okay, so those are your three that you can choose from. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or maybe type thing. So government should not censor speech, press, media, or internet. Well, first of all, this one's a pretty easy one, right? And it actually should be a pretty easy one for most people. I mean, if you really consider this, the First Amendment basically spells it out for you, right? The First Amendment says, this is right. This is the Constitution. First Amendment: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. Okay, so it's right in the First Amendment that basically says that we have a right. Again, what is a right? A right is a God-given thing to people. Again, it is a God-given thing to people. It's a freedom. It's a God-given freedom that we have. A lot of people use the word right in the wrong way, right? They don't use it in the right way. They say, I have the right to, drive my car to the store or whatever. I have the right to have an abortion. I have the right to, they throw around the word right. And it really doesn't really mean that, because a right is a God-given freedom that everyone should have. And the wonderful thing about the country that we live in and the founding fathers that established it is that they understood that. They understood that this is a God-given freedom. And so they wrote the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all of this, right, to make sure, or at least to do their best at establishing a government that honored those rights. Okay, not wanting to get into a whole history lesson here, but that is the crux of why we believe what we believe on this particular issue. And when the First Amendment basically says, and it doesn't just basically says, it does say that we have the right to religion, we have the right to a free exercise of free speech, of the press, of the right for the people to reasonably assemble and petition their government for redress of grievances, which basically means that we can go to court, right? The government, one of their jobs is to settle disagreements between people. And so right in there, when it says we have the freedom of speech and we also have the freedom of press, well, when you have a question here that says the government should not censor speech, press, media, or internet, well, I would say I would agree with that. I mean, the only one that I would even listen to consideration of is internet. I mean, there probably should be some restriction, I guess, on internet type stuff. Comes to pornography and some age type of things, but I mean, beyond that kind of stuff, for the most part, 99% of this question I would agree with. Okay, so I put agree. All right, let's go to the next one. Military service should be voluntary. There should be no draft. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Maybe. Well, military service should be voluntary. But when it goes on a little bit further and it says there should be no draft, well, I would have to probably say maybe on this one, okay? Yes, military service should, in most cases, be voluntary. There have been times in our history that we have had to have a non-voluntary military, and that was for a reason and for a specific time. And so to say that there should never be a draft, I would disagree with that. But I do agree that it should be voluntary for the most part. Okay, so that's why I put maybe on that one, and I'm trying to not put maybe, but that one I just kind of have to because of the way that it's written. All right, moving on. There should be no laws regarding sex between consenting adults. Yeah, so So in this case, there's definitely um, there's a lot more behind this question, and this is really boiling it down to. I wish there was more to the question, okay? Because the way that it's written, there should be no laws regarding sex between consenting adults. I don't believe that's the case. I disagree with that. Okay, I disagree with that because like for instance, prostitution laws. I think that there are adults and minors, but adults in particular, that are being taken advantage of. Same thing with minors, but there is a sex industry out there, and they aren't necessarily doing it because they're consenting, saying, "Oh, I really want to have sex with this stranger." There's other things as well. We could really probably almost do a whole podcast on this, but for the most part, I would have to say I disagree that there should be no laws regarding sex between consenting adults. So that's why I put that one. All right. Repeal laws prohibiting adult possession and use of drugs. Repeal laws prohibiting adult possession and use of drugs. So, in the state of Oregon, they basically had this very thing. Okay, we've talked a little bit about it on the podcast. They had what they called Measure 110, and basically what it was they put up in front of the voters a measure, because in Oregon you can have both initiative and referendum, they call it, which basically means that the Congress, their Congress, state legislators can put up a referendum, basically saying, "Hey, we don't want to deal with this. We want you guys to vote on it." So it's kind of like getting them out of the hot water there. And then they also have initiative, which basically means that they can get enough signatures to put something on the ballot, and they can even pay those people to get the signatures, and so on and so forth. A group that wanted to see all drug laws be done away with went ahead and did that, and they put a lot of money into the campaign to be able to put this through. It went through. Amazingly enough, it went through. And so for all intents and purposes, all drugs, whether it be anywhere from marijuana, whatever, all the way up to very hard drugs, were basically legalized. Okay, there was a little bit of a thing where people had to call in, or I mean, but for all intents and purposes, all drugs are, and it's still on the books, are legal in Oregon. What that has done, though, is that has absolutely devastated that state in many ways. And you are seeing just a complete drug culture. People just, I mean, in Portland and other places, Eugene and Salem, you can just walk down the street and you can see people in various states of getting high. They look like zombies. It's sad in so many ways. There's so many overdoses. It has absolutely devastated that state in many ways. And even and I'm talking about their governor is very liberal. And even she has come up with some alterations to those laws, saying, "Hey, we need to start making some of these drugs illegal again." And so for that to happen, things are bad. And so I would say repeal laws prohibiting adults possession of and use of drugs. I completely disagree with that. All right, government should not target, detain, and deport undocumented workers. Okay, so again, this is the open borders thing, and if Donald Trump is going to be reelected coming up here in November, then he is definitely going to put an end to this open borders thing, and he's also said that he is going to deport many people that have come into this country illegally. Again, we allow over 1 million people a year to come into this country legally. We are being inundated with millions of people that are coming into this country illegally. So the question is, government should not target, detain, and deport undocumented workers. So those people that did come across illegally, we shouldn't do anything about them. I would completely disagree with that. And I think we are already seeing some of the effects of things of this open border policy that the Biden administration has had here. We are going to continue to see those effects, and you don't even have to look at this country. You can actually look at other countries around the world, particularly in Europe. Europe imported, basically, or allowed a lot of, quote, immigrants, unquote, from kind of that northern African section. There are a lot of countries in the northern African area that are very Muslim, and they entered a lot of these European countries, brought a bunch of these guys in, and they did not assimilate themselves, let's say, into the country. They ended up actually. There are places in Europe now where the police won't go, and there are areas that are absolutely just lawless type areas because of what they did, and so they see the error of their ways. They have obviously trying to take some steps to regain some sort of control, but that has definitely been a very bad thing for them. And like I say, you don't even have to look at this country to know that's just bad policy. And so again, I would disagree. And that would conclude the personal issues portion of this. So let's move on and let's see what it says when it comes to economic issues. All right. So here we are. Taxpayers should not be responsible for student loan debt. Taxpayers should not be responsible for student loan debt. Would I agree? Would I disagree? Or maybe? Well, that's a pretty easy one, right? When it comes to economics, I mean, that's a really easy one. And we know, I mean, this is a hot topic. Why is this a hot topic? Because the Biden administration was told they tried to cancel student loan debt, which when you say cancel student loan debt, basically what you're saying is the government went ahead and loaned the money to these people that were going to college and universities, and they were supposed to be paying it back. But then the Biden administration came in and said, guess what? We're just going to pay that off for you. Well, what are they paying it off with? They're paying it off with taxpayer money. Okay, so people who never went to college, some of them, are paying the bill for those that did go to college. So you're basically you're helping the wealthy on the backs of the poor in many cases. And this is a terrible idea. And of course, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said this is a terrible idea. And so they said, no, you can't do that. That is not. Now, these guys signed on the dotted line. They put their name to the loan, and they said that we would pay it back, and now they're not paying it back, and that's not right. And so, no, the federal government cannot just arbitrarily go, okay, we wipe it all out. Basically, of course, Biden administration is trying to buy votes. And yet, what did they do? Even though the Supreme Court went ahead and said, oh, yeah, no, you can't do that. The Biden administration came back and said, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. In fact, Biden just this last weekend said that. He often opens his mouth, and he shouldn't say the things that you're not supposed to say out loud. He does it oftentimes. And he did this very weekend. He said, hey, the Supreme Court told me I couldn't cancel student loan debt, and we went ahead and did it anyway. In fact, we found 2 different ways to do it. I mean, that's literally what he said. I mean, and almost those exact words. I'm not even hardly paraphrasing him here. So taxpayers should not be responsible for student loan debt. I would agree with that, because they should not be responsible for other people's loan debt. I don't care if it's student loan debt or anything else. I mean, if you want to co-sign with for a family member or whatever you want to do, I think it's bad to do that. I don't do that. But if you want to go ahead and do that, go ahead and do that. But I'm not responsible for you taking out a loan and then deciding you don't want to pay it back. All right. Next one, government should not be responsible for providing health care. Well, I agree. In fact, I've said right here on this podcast that government needs to get out of healthcare. It absolutely needs to get out of healthcare. The government involved in healthcare has only driven up and skyrocketed the cost of healthcare. If you took government out of healthcare, you would see competition come back again. You would see the price go down. You would see, now again, you would say, well, that makes it healthcare worse. No, it wouldn't, because again, if you're a hospital system, and instead of relying on the government check and just sitting back and doing whatever they want because they're the one fitting the bill, then you want to drive people to your hospital system when they're sick by giving them the best health care. So your health care goes up, the quality of health care goes up, and the prices come down because it's competitive, right? So yes, government needs to get out of healthcare. Government should not be responsible for providing healthcare. I should not be responsible with my taxpayer dollars for funding somebody else who, had an owie and decided to go to the emergency room on the weekend. Okay. I don't go very often. It's probably noticeable, but my wife, she works in the healthcare industry, and she, tells me when I need to go, and I go. But it is definitely something the government shouldn't be a part of. So, next one, let people control their own retirement. Privatize Social Security. Well, yeah, definitely. And that may surprise you a little bit, but I'm telling you, the Social Security system is not doing well. Okay. It is not doing well at all. In fact, we can see that it's going, I don't know. I may not even be able to do anything off of the healthcare system, and I'm 55. Okay. It is not doing well at all, because it's not like the money that I put into the Social Security system is the money that I'm getting back. That's not the way it works. Okay, maybe that's the way it started, but that's not the way it worked. The way it works now. Okay, the Democrats, the liberals came in many years ago and raided that system. Okay, they saw the bucket of money, they saw the money in there, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We can use that money elsewhere." And then we'll just pay the Social Security, the people that are drawing the Social Security, we'll pay that with the money that's coming in from younger people. Okay, so it's a Ponzi scheme. The government is running a Ponzi scheme here. It's not something they would even allow a private entity to do, but they're doing it. And so what would be better? Well, for me to take the money that I've placed into Social Security, I tell you what, I'll take all the money that I placed in there, and I will go take that and invest it elsewhere, and I'll bet you I'll do a ton better than what the Social Security system is going to do for me when I get to that age. So yes, let people control their own retirement and privatize Social Security. That's an agreement on that one. Replace government welfare with private charity. There's another one for you. Replace government welfare with private charity. Yeah, that's not even one to even think about, right? I mean, who does a better job? Is it government or private industry, even private charity? Well, of course. Let's just take the homeless situation, for instance. Okay, the homeless industry, let's call it. Okay, is promoted by government. Why? Because if I am working for the government and my job is to help the homeless, do I have more job security, and does my department grow more and get more money from Congress and things like that if homelessness and homeless rates go up or go down? Well, of course, the answer is go up, right? So my motivation as a government worker is to make the problem worse. It's at least to not make it better, right? Because if I make it better, I get less money, I have less job security. That's I'm not supposed to be working myself out of a job if I'm in a government job, right? And so the motivation is definitely not to help people. Whereas when it comes to private charity, of course, the motivation is to help people. Every dollar that I am spending on the issue at hand, whether it be, like I say, in this case, homelessness, every dollar I am making sure that it's effective. And of course, all of this plays out when you look at the data. When you look at the data, like for instance, when it comes to um, like alcoholism and narcotics and that type of stuff, what are the entities that are doing the best? Is it government or is it private charity? It's private charity, and in fact, those that are that have a biblical base actually are the ones that have far greater success than anything the government's doing. So, should we replace government welfare with private charity? Of course we should. In fact, that's biblical. The churches were supposed to be helping the poor, not the government. That's not their job, and they do a terrible job of it. All right, here's one. Cut taxes and government spending by 50% or more. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, the government is involved in too much stuff. Okay. Now, we don't even have to get into our national debt and things like that. I mean, obviously, that's terrible. Our national debt and what is happening there is only going to create problems for us. But, um, but beyond that, our government is spending too much money. We are just like drunken sailors right now. We are spending and spending and spending. And to be honest with you, the Republicans, they're not doing that great a job of curtailing that back. I mean, when they're in charge, we still see government spending still run amok. And so the problem, part of the problem is that if I'm an elected official, then I'm going to want to go back to my constituents, and I'm going to want to say, hey, look what I got for you. And in order to do that, I have to spend money, right? And so, reelect me because, look, we got you a new bridge or whatever the case may be. Boy, I look so much better when I'm spending than when I'm cutting the budget. So that was the end of the portion there on economic issues. They had a couple bonus issues. It says, which label do you think best reflects your views? Is it libertarian, progressive, moderate, conservative, authoritarian, unsure? Of course, I put conservative. I actually vacillated a little bit on this one between conservative and libertarian, but yeah, I put conservative. There's actually still too many areas where I disagree with libertarianism. Because not all libertarianism is biblical. So, which statement most closely aligns with your view of government? And I put, we need to drastically reduce the government because it does more harm than good. And literally, how can you argue with that, right? Government should not regulate misinformation and hate speech. Well, yeah, it should not regulate misinformation and hate speech. In fact, again, the Biden administration tried to form a whole department and had a department head and everything that was assigned to punish people for misinformation and hate speech. That, of course, backfired on them, and they had to dismantle that. And good for us for putting the pressure on them for doing so. But of course, the liberal idea here is that that we all should be in harmony, and if we just speak good things, that everybody will be hunky dory, and that's just not the case. Okay, government should not compel people to get vaccines. Yeah, well, of course, we should not compel people to get vaccines. I mean, this is ridiculous. We should have autonomy of our own bodies. Again, that's a biblical concept, and again, something we've covered here on the podcast, particularly when it came to the COVID vaccine. And you can go back and you can listen to those. And in fact, I think one of those is one of the most popular episodes that we've had. Government should not spy on American citizens without a warrant. Again, this just seems like duh type stuff, right? Doesn't it to you? It just seems like this kind of stuff is it shouldn't even be a thing. It shouldn't even be a question. I mean, are there people that argue with it in favor of this? That we should be able to spy on Americans? How about loosen restrictions on immigration? That kind of goes with that open borders thing. No, we should not. In fact, the restrictions we have right now are way too loose. Reduce barriers to international free trade. That's a maybe. I mean, there's I'm not a big one for tariffs, but there's arguments both ways. I put a maybe on that one. Restore the free market to healthcare. We talked about that one. Let parents control where and how their children are educated. Of course, we're a big advocates for that. Obviously, we homeschool, and there's a lot of people that would be in favor of vouchers. There's a few things with vouchers, but obviously we'll get into that later. And a balanced budget is more important than borrowing for social programs. Yes, we cannot borrow anymore. We just can't. All right. So what did that's the end of it. So what did they say I am? Well, I'm big time conservative. In fact, on the economic issues, I scored like 100% conservative. So yeah, it's to you. I mean, maybe you would answer those differently. I would challenge you to understand exactly where you fall on these things, and not just where you fall on these things, but why you fall on those things a certain way. And a lot of it should come right back to the Bible. What does the Bible say about these issues? And obviously we try to cover a lot of that here on the podcast. Of why we see what we see and why we believe what we believe, because I think it's maybe almost even more important to know why we believe what we believe. And so I challenge you to do that. Maybe you can find a test or whatever the case may be. If you're uncertain, I would love to hear why you find yourself a certain way. Maybe you find yourself a progressive, libertarian, authoritarian. I mean, whatever. I would love moderate. I would love to hear from you. And of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening.
This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.